He's a man, such a man, such a man. He's a real man's man. He's a man, such a man.
Welcome back to ULTRASPECTICUS, a journey through classic Ultraman. Last time our hero had to deal with Hydra. No, not that Hydra. Although with Ultraman getting his own Marvel comic, I guess anything is possible. But that's not what we're here to discuss. Let us press on. In episode 21, Breach the Wall of Smoke, Mount Omu is a tranquil spot, but one day a boy finds a bunch of dead birds everywhere. The grown-ups think this has to do with volcanic activity nearby. Meanwhile, some hikers are having a picnic on top of Mount Omu and the water begins to boil. It also emits some kind of noxious gas. They then see a monster in the smoke. Naturally, the crew is called in to check it out. Arashi shrugs it off, but Fuji is raring to go. Cap lets her go, but only because he thinks this one is not dangerous. Well, that's sexist as hell. Hoshino tags along, of course.
ダメじゃないの。いくら隊員になったからって無断で乗り込んだりして。他の人だったら怒るんだけど、お姉ちゃんだったら優しいから、きっと連れてってくれると思ったんだ。
And they eventually find the monster in the gas. Poison gas monster Chemular. Not to be confused with Bemular in the first episode. The monster spews more gas at them, causing them to retreat. The masks they have don't help, sadly. The townspeople flee or pass out in town as Chemular heads down the mountain. Ide comes up with a new weapon, the Mad Bazooka. Ultraman wrestles with Chemular while the crew sets it up and aims. They only have one shot, so they have to make it count. And not hit Ultraman. They fire and hit it in the back while Ultraman holds it in place.
Yay! ついにやったぞこのマットバズーカで
姉さん、僕のヒントもだいぶ合ってるんだよ。
分かってる分かってる帰ったら飴玉買ってやるからな
Chemular limps back to the mountain and explodes. In episode 22, Overthrow the Surface, the Japan branch of the Science Patrol gets a surprise visit. And Morheim, a member of the Paris HQ, is here to take Hayata back with her. He's being transferred to be a trainer of new pilots for the Space Defense Force. The crew bid him farewell as he leaves with Anne, Ide saying he wasn't that useful anyway. Oh, if only he knew. Ide then later spots the same woman, but it couldn't be. She couldn't be in two places at once. Or could she? Meanwhile, some strange magnetic forces cause trouble and they discover it was a sabotage. Fuji contacts Paris and neither Hayata nor Anne have returned yet. Ide looks around and finds Anne, but surprise, it's a fake. At the same time, a monster comes out of the underground, Teleston. The crew tries to bombard the monster, but that just irritates him. The fake Anne is the one controlling Teleston, in case you couldn't notice. Meanwhile, Hayata wakes up tied to a gurney while strange beings stand around him. They tell him they are underground people and that they're 40,000 meters under the earth. Their plan is to take over the surface world, if you couldn't tell from the title. Darn, I always thought it would be Morlocks or mole people who would do that.
Woo! Morlocks! Chuds! Mole people! There is no escape from the fortress of the moles. No, except that.
They're the ones that sent the monster, and they reveal their plan to make surface people their slaves. They kidnapped Hayata because they know he's Ultraman, and this way he can't help them. How did you guys know? You have no eyes. Did you hear him blurt it out somewhere, or are you another race of beings who inexplicably have psychic powers? Apparently the latter, as they plan to hypnotize Ultraman and use him for their nefarious bidding. They try to hypnotize him, but there's one teensy little problem. Well, let the narrator explain it.
Ultraman は光の子であった。宇宙の彼方 M78 星雲からの正義の使者ウルトラマンは、たとえ早田が意識を失っていようと、光の国のスーパーマンだったのである。
So yeah, Hayata may be hypnotizable, but Ultraman is not. Convenient. So he escapes and grapples with Teleston. In episode 23, My Home is Earth, a peace conference is taking place in Tokyo, but plane and boat accidents keep happening to different representatives of all countries. Meanwhile, a car is run off the road and something strange happens, like it hit an invisible wall or something. Pilots say the same thing happened to them, which may be the same thing causing accidents from before. Sure enough, the same thing happens to the crew. They hear a loud noise before the car explodes, like an invisible rocket.
よく見ろ。自転車の車輪には何本という金属の矢がついてる。しかしこうして早く回せば回すほど見えなくなる。ものすごいスピードで動くものは我々人間の目には捉えにくくなる。
そうか。あのロケットはものすごい力で振動してるっていうわけか。
They plan to blast this rocket with an alpha ray which will make it visible. It works. The rocket has been spotted, but it gets away. They chase it, but it returns fire. They blast back and hit it, causing the rocket to crash. When it does, a giant monster rises up. Metamorphosis monster Jamila.
Yo, Jamila!
How do I know its name? Someone name-dropped it.
あれはやっぱりジャミラ。
なんだって
Jamila doesn't stay to fight, but runs and they open fire on it. Cap asks Alan, a member on loan from the Paris HQ, why he called that monster Jamila. It's not a monster, but a human. During the space race between the United States and the USSR, which was kind of a hot-button issue while this was taking place, one astronaut was launched into space but never came back. His name was Jamila. His loss was covered up and never mentioned. It seems though he did indeed survive and landed on an alien planet which mutated him. Now he's back to get revenge. Ide refuses to fight a human, but they have their orders. Kill Jamila without divulging his identity so the peace talks can continue. They try to convince Ide that Jamila's not a man anymore.
俺やめた。ジャミラと戦うのはやめた。何を言ってるんだ。話せよ。話せよ。よく考えてみりゃ、ジャミラは俺たちの先輩じゃないか。その人と戦えるか。しかしな、おい嵐、俺たちだってな、いつジャミラと同じ運命になるか知れないんだぞ。何をするんだ。
During the next attack, Hayata saves a young boy and is able to slip away and transform. He shoulder tackles Jamila and the two fight it out. After a slugfest, Ultraman uses his Ultra Water Current, which puts Jamila down for good. In a last tearful moment, he reaches out in sorrow for those who turn their backs on him. They even erect a plaque for Jamila outside the conference building. Well, this is kind of a downer ending. episode 24, the Undersea Science Center, the crew is invited to the opening of What Else?, the Undersea Science Center. Over 200 guests have been invited to the Undersea Center. They go there via submarine, but something happens that rocks the boat. Was it an accident, or did something attack it? Hoshino takes the guests on tour while Fuji goes to pick up the press. Suddenly, the Undersea Center is attacked by some giant drill. Fuji sees the pipeline has been damaged. Without that, they'll have no oxygen. Hoshino tells Cap the dock is leaking, and now they're trapped. The crew wonders what they can do to save Cap and the others. They decide to use the Tortoise, a new sea vehicle, to drain the dock to get them out. Once they get there, Hayata informs Cap that they're above the center and tells them to get to the top. Suddenly, an undersea monster appears to stop the rescue. Abyssal monster Gabilla. The sub gets rammed by the monster, knocking out Arashi, and Hayata transforms. In episode 25, the mysterious comet COMET, a comet designated COMET is on a collision course with Earth. It seems like nothing can stop it from hitting the planet. Professor Iwamoto says it's an 83% chance it'll hit. And Ide faints. Weenie. They discover how close it is and where it could hit, and when. Tomorrow. The general consensus, though, is that it will do little to no damage. The crew gets a message from Paris HQ that the cosmic rays could set off nearby hydrogen bombs. All are accounted for and deactivated, but Ide remembers that 6 bombs were lost, and still have their detonators. Cap remembers the radiation coming from the Japan Alps, which means that's where the bombs probably are.
きっと爆発するぞ。6個も一度に爆発してみろ。猛烈な放射能で地球上の生物はみんな死んでしまうぞ。デマだよ、あの話は。デマならデマで確認しておく必要がある。よし、至急パリ本部へ問い合わせてみよう。
Thankfully, the comet doesn't hit Earth, but it did engulf it in rays. Meanwhile, at the Alps, Ricola! La, la. The crew is glad that it didn't hit, but the bombs must be recovered anyway. Suddenly, they spot a giant monster, a huge snow ape, Gigas.
ああ、おい、よし。
Fuji gets a report of an unidentified flying object. It's another monster, and it's after the VTOL. This new monster is named Dorako. The two monsters duke it out on the Alps. Who do we root for here? Later, Ide gets a fix on the bombs, and then another monster joins the fight. Red King 2. Yep, there's another one. It has the 6 bombs on its neck, which is bad. Red King 2 sees the two monsters fighting and wants to join the fun. Now it's a triple threat match. Red King clips Dorako's wings and teams up with Gigas for a beatdown. Dorako succumbs to its injuries and dies, while Red King and Gigas go at it. Hayata then runs off after telling Arashi which one to attack. Red King has Gigas on the ropes until Hayata blasted in the tail. He smacks Hayata, who falls and, of course, turns into Ultraman at the last minute. I should also point out that this is technically the last time we ever see Hoshino in the series. as his real-life actor suffered a leg injury and couldn't continue. They never explain what happens to Hoshino, he just disappears. In episode 26, The Monster Highness Part 1, yes, we've come to our first two-parter. Some kids are picking on another kid for believing monsters are real. Where the hell have you kids been the last 25 episodes? Under a rock? The bully kid is wearing a monster mask, so one could make the argument he brought that on himself. Might as well have taped a sign to your back that says, "Please give me a wedgie." The kid said his teacher knows some people who are going to catch one. Even his mom berates him for drawing a monster instead of getting high marks in math or grammar. Meanwhile, an expedition is underway and the Science Patrol is helping them find the monster. The leader of this expedition, Professor Nakaya, says that the alleged Gamorasaurus existed 150 million years ago. And as if on cue, they hear the screams of the beast. Suddenly, the Gamorasaurus smashes its way out of the mountain. Or Gamora for short, as it will come to be known. Nakaya begs Arashi not to shoot it as they want it alive. That's not how it works in this show, Prof. Later, the boy Takashi shows his classmates a newspaper clipping of Gamora, and now they believe him. Back at HQ, the crew discusses how to transport Gamora. Cap says they'll put it to sleep.
本来なら科学特捜隊の名誉にかけても体重の運び屋なんてお断りするところだが万国博のためとあっては協力せざるを得ない。
でもキャップ、40メートルもある大怪獣を空輸するなんて無謀だと思うんですけど。
もし途中で暴れられでもしたらどうします？
眠らせるんだ。
Unfortunately, it wakes up en route to the drop-off point while the kids sneak in to see it. They're spotted by Hayata, who tells them to get to safety. He then takes them out of harm's way himself instead. Gamora is blasted by the military, but it burrows underground to get away. The crew and Professor Nakaya regroup to discuss what to do next. The kids from before play near a construction site and Gamora pops up nearby. One of the kids, Osamu, calls out for Ultraman, and what do you know, it works! Gamora uses Tail Whip, which is super effective. It somehow causes Ultraman to lose his beta capsule. Ultraman's timer nearly goes out as he tries to use his Spacium beam on Gamora as he, digs a hole. It gets away and Ultraman takes off, without his beta capsule, which the kid finds to end part 1.
Ultraman 頑張れ。残された時間はもうわずかなのだ。
In episode 27, The Monster Highness Part 2, after the fight, Ultraman flies off and we finally see how he turns back into Hayata. Osamu's parents find him and he has the beta capsule Ultraman dropped during the battle. Cap asks Fuji to call New York HQ to get more sedative while Hayata heads back to the headquarters. Time passes with no sign of Gamora and Ide comes in with a beacon he made so they can track Gamora and hopefully take it alive. Speaking of which, it shows up in town and wastes no time wrecking the city. The crew moves in with their weapons in hand. They shoot it, as does the military, to no avail. Hayata uses the Mars 133 to aim for the tail, which hurts it. They tag it with the transmitter, so now it can be tracked just before it burrows underground again. Meanwhile, the tail they shot off is moving on its own. Talk about your phantom limbs. They blast it and it stops moving. Fuji tracks Gamora and says it's moving east towards Osaka Castle. This is bad, that's a famous landmark. Osamu realizes he has to get the beta capsule back to Ultraman, so he sneaks out. Smart kid. At least he's not being possessive and selfish and keeping it for himself. Cap actually speaks some English and asks for more sedatives from New York.
Hello, this is Murama speaking. Could you send us UNG advertising shot?
Gamora rises up again and they open fire. Gamora trashes the tanks while the crew moves closer. Osamu tells the guards about bringing something back to Ultraman, and not only do they believe him, but they offer him a ride. That has gotta be a first. Gamora seems unstoppable. I guess he's taking the loss of his tail really hard. Osamu runs up to Hayata and shows him he brought something to give to Ultraman. Hayata is shocked to see his beta capsule. So he didn't even know it was missing? What's with you, man? I have a minor heart attack when I misplace my smartphone for a second. Meanwhile, Cap and Arashi are stuck near a dead end. Thankfully, Hayata can now transform and comes to the rescue as Ultraman. Time for a rematch. Without its tail, Gamora is weaker and Ultraman has a sporting chance. In episode 28, Human Specimen 5 and 6, strange bus accidents have been happening and naturally the crew is investigating. Cap and Ide ride the next bus to where and when the supposed accidents take place. Sure enough, it happens again. The driver sees some strange colors and the bus careens over the side. Are we sure he didn't drop LSD before this? Cap wakes up next to a female passenger. He wakes her up and luckily they're both unscathed, but the bus has had it. Cap doesn't see any casualties near the wreckage and gets a closer look.
何しているんです？バスの乗客はどうしたんだ？とっくに収容されましたよ。もう事故から1時間経ってますからね。1時間？そうか。それでこの高さから墜落したにしては不思議な事故ですな。全員かすり傷程度ですから。まあ一人だけ足を折った人がいましたが。一人だけ？家督隊の井出隊員だとか。奴は無事だったのか。は？いや、ありがとう。
Cap goes to find the lady, but she sneaks off. He contacts HQ, but seems to have fallen. Meanwhile, Ide is laid up with a busted leg. Guess not everyone got out unscathed. 2 hours later, Hayata decides to take command after not hearing from Cap and go to look for him. Speaking of Cap, he's okay and makes it to the top of the cliff. Meanwhile, a member of the research center says that an alien infiltrated the lab, but he managed to escape. Ide questions the man, but he disappears. What happened? Seems the alien captured him. The alien named Dada, yes, that's his name, Dada 271 to be precise, gets his orders to capture the specimens and take them back to their planet. We then see he shrunk down the scientists into test tubes. It needs 2 more specimens. The escaped scientist wakes up and we see Dada possess him so he can capture more people. The female passenger from before goes into the research center and is next in line to be captured until she sees an SOS. The Dada in disguise comes in and corners her.
見たな。
そう。
Cap gets the idea to shut the power off and calls for help, telling Hayata where he is. Since he's alone, Hayata transforms to deal with this problem. In episode 29, Challenge to the Underground, scientists investigate when the largest gold mine in Japan experiences earthquakes, and a big gold dragon appears. It seems to be subterranean and moves fast underground. Ide isn't worried as he has a new invention, the subterranean Velucidar. That's a mouthful. Hayata tells Ide to show it off later. The team splits up and moves out. They take the VTOLs to the mountains while the military attacks this gold monster. The crew arrive and attack it in their VTOLs until a miner waves them down. Seems a friend of his is lost in the mines and he wants them to find him. Ide uses his new ride, the Velucidar, to travel underground and discovers a cave. They hit the headlights and spot the missing mine worker. For some reason, he doesn't want to leave, though.
おい、この山には怪獣がいるんだぞ。いいか、いくら科学特捜隊でもゴルドンに手出しをしたら承知しないぞ。ゴルドン？そうとも。この山の金庫を発見したのはこの俺なんだ。その宝の山をゴルドンは台無しにしてしまった。ゴルドンが金を食べたとでも言うの？ひとかけらも残さずだ。
Unfortunately, they run right into the monster, Goldon. They have to get past Goldon, so they use the lasers to blast it. They have no effect, and Goldon punts the big drill. Goldon makes its way above ground as the VTOLs and military open fire. The crew is out of rockets, but Hayata has an idea. It must be weak to light if it's subterranean. They use a bazooka loaded with Corona bullets, yes, Corona bullets, and their guns to hurt Goldon, who falls over. Cap that they managed to subdue Goldon. Cap tells them the Velucidar is broken because of Goldon, but Ide fixes it. Thankfully, the Velucidar gets moving again, but runs into Goldon, blocking the hole. The miner wants out of the vehicle because he wants his gold. This guy is crazy! The ruckus knocks him out, but wait, there's two of them? To make matters worse, their oxygen is running out. Cap and Ide may be done for. Ide sees one torpedo left and they have to try to take the other Goldon out while they have air to breathe. They fire and hit it, causing Goldon to surface. When it does, Hayata transforms. In episode 30, Phantom of the Snow Mountains, we begin where else in the Snowy Mountains. Hang on, gotta do this again. Ricola! A train makes its way through the Snowy Mountains, and no, it's not Snowpiercer. At a ski resort, some men bring in a hunter they found nearly frozen to death. He says it was Woo. Woo!
ウーにやられた。ウーだって？バカを言うな。今時そんなものがいるわけない。
We then get a flashback to what happened. It seems he was bear hunting in the mountains when he saw a strange girl. A snow girl, as he calls her.
逃げるな！おいこら！おい！逃げるんじゃない！
She calls on Woo to help her. Suddenly, the abominable snow monster from Rudolph shows up. Remember, Bumbles bounce. This Woo is a local myth told by the old folks, like the Yeti or Sasquatch. They then decide in the interest of public safety to call the cops to investigate. The mysterious snow girl from before overhears this. Of course, the crew are considered the better candidates than the cops, so they head out in the VTOL. Hayata, Arashi, and Ide are assigned to this mission. Meanwhile, some boys are harassing this snow girl, saying she's the one that brings out the monster. Seems the whole town is against her. She is the, quote, daughter of a snow woman. The crew lands near town, and the owner of the resort informs them about the snowy mountains that stay snowy, even in the summer. He asks them to deal with this monster, and he shows where it was spotted last. They ski to the scene of the crime, or rather their stunt doubles do. But they soon get lost as the markers don't match with the map. It's almost like someone is leading them astray. They spot the snow girl and catch her before she escapes. She thinks they are terrible people who are here to kill Wu. Hayata ends up spraining his ankle in the confusion. They ask around about the girl, and the owner explains why she is this snow girl. She's a pariah because no one truly knows where she comes from, and that they all know that she's allegedly the daughter of a snow woman. That explains a lot.
Thanks for clearing that up.
We learn that her name is Yuki. The crew thinks that maybe she's not all bad, and as if on cue, the people scream that the monster is coming. It's Wu peeking over the mountainside. Yuki tries to stop the crew from going to face it. She tries to talk Wu down, but a hunter shoots at Wu, who angers him. Yuki begs Wu to leave before they throw her out of the village, which he reluctantly does. The villagers find a frozen person and decide enough is enough and want Yuki out of their town. The resort owner wants Wu dead, and the townspeople chase Yuki, who collapses in the snow, and calls Wu yet again for help. The VTOL opens fire on Wu and ends up crashing. Yuki cries out for Wu again, which makes its way to the resort. Hayata calls for the VTOL and gets no answer, so he transforms. They roll around and this is like Ultraman fighting a living carpet. Yuki tries to talk down Wu again before Ultraman blasts it. She collapses in the ground and Wu vanishes, like he never even existed. And Yuki is dead. Wow, this is dark. Hayata wakes up Arashi and Ide after the crash and tells them Yuki went back to the mountains. It seems she was an illusion too. Or was she? Very confusing episode. Well, that's it for this edition. Come back next time for more monster mayhem, a killer plant, a monster graveyard, and Ultraman's greatest challenge yet. And I'll see you in the land of light.
What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Say it again now. What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Yes, he is.
Jenny? Jenny?